Sahana vavatu, sahano bhunaktu, sahaviryam karavavahe, tejasvina vadhitamastu, ma vidvishavahe. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. So far, chapter 2, 3, 4, 5 done. Before beginning to chapter 6, we will first go through a storyline of how chapter 2 to 5 connects together. This will give us a structure, this will give us some context, how it naturally leads to the next chapter. This will help you to also see the relevance of Arjuna's progress. Arjuna being a sadhaka who has a sattvic mind and is interested in the truth that Krishna is expounding. Okay. In chapter 2, Sankhya Yoga, the yoga of knowledge, Krishna expounds the entire vision of oneness to Arjuna. Seeing Arjuna's concern, he starts right from the highest. That means if one is to be motivated, then you show them what is it that we're aiming for, what is the goal. For that reason, Krishna, right from the start, chapter 2, expounds what is a jnani, a wise person, and what does it mean to be a wise person. And one of the things that he mentioned was a wise person is free of concerns, but that comes in a form of mental equipoise. What does mental equipoise mean? In other words, a wise person has mental equipoise. Mental equipoise means there is no concern for profit or loss. That means the mind remains at an equilibrium despite the profit or loss apparent in the jnani's life, which means it's something that is usually acknowledged or desired comes, then the jnani appears or treats that as neutrally as the other side or the other equation, which is a loss. That is not to say that a jnani remains apathetic or cold to situations, just that the jnani observes both to be passing phenomena. Okay? So the summary is chapter 2, vision of oneness, and Krishna describes a jnani, a person who is wise. What kind of mind does this person have? The answer is a mind of mental equipoise. What does mental equipoise mean? An equilibrious state about profit and loss. Okay? Which is actually the opposite to how we usually treat the situation in the world. When something comes, a profit comes, I'm happy. When a loss comes, then I am sad. So you can see the difference here. So chapter 2 also whets Arjuna's appetite, because like with anything, if you sell a product, how do you sell a product? You demonstrate the benefits to the prospect. Similarly, Krishna, the salesman of knowledge, demonstrated the benefits to Arjuna, the sincere seeker, because if we don't see what's in it for me, that is the natural conclusion of a human being, it's understandable, then there will be a natural disinterest about participating further into the subject matter. So that's chapter 2. Now, chapter 3. What happens in chapter 3 is Krishna recognizes Arjuna's mental disability. What does this mean? Krishna sees that Arjuna still lacks the necessary qualifications to understand what it is that was really being shown in chapter 2. Because it's easy to show the vision of oneness, but it's something else to understand the depth of what it means to say, I am Atman. So for that reason, Krishna spots two problems or situations, and that is emotional disbalance in Arjuna's emotional makeup and intellectual incapacity to comprehend the knowledge spoken in chapter 2. Okay, for this, in other words, these two restrictions were holding Arjuna from seeing the true worth of self-knowledge demonstrated in chapter 2. So, Krishna applies a fix or a solution. And this solution is called Karma Yoga. And why does he prescribe Karma Yoga? In order to help Arjuna to prepare his mind or her mind. When I say Arjuna, I mean him and her. Don't just think he. For the assimilation and comprehension of knowledge. Okay? Seeing that Arjuna is an active type, that means if you're an active type in life, then Karma Yoga is fantastic sadhana for you. Now, this conversation then extends to chapter 4. So chapter 3 is Karma Yoga, path of action. Chapter 4 is the yoga of renunciation of action through knowledge. In other words, renouncing action, how? By knowledge. So the conversation now continues from chapter 3. So what Krishna says in chapter 4 is that the action has an inherent flaw. Well, it's not a flaw. Action has an inherent, it needs to be addressed. And what does it mean to be addressed? It means that every action, despite how noble it is, how much dharmic it is, only leads to what? Karma phala, which is the fruits of actions, and karma phala either consists of punya karma, that is meritorious actions, or papa karma, that is actions which are of nature of selfishness, you could call it sinful. And for this reason Arjuna says that renouncing action is to renounce what? The action or the doer of action? Krishna says to renounce action is not to renounce the actual action in the world, but it's to renounce the notion that I am the doer of the action. Okay, and for this reason, because the doer, enjoyer, the ahamkara, is the principle which associates the doership, thus the entire complex of the human being, the mind, this means that all of our guilt, shame, embarrassment, low self-esteem, confidence issues, everything about our emotional makeup that keeps us small and limited, that can be dropped in one instant if the I is shifted from ahamkara to the true self being satyam. For example, there was a thief or a robber in the forest called Ratnakar, and he basically used to rob people. That was his job occupation, swadharma, rob people. And he was exposed through certain circumstances to knowledge. And once he was exposed to knowledge, he obviously took up self-knowledge, that is chapter 2, Jnanam Yoga. And by the recognition of his true nature, what happened? He dropped that principle which he thought was the sinner, which is the false I, and by that nature he turned into sage Valmiki, who wrote the epic Ramayana. Okay, so by one instant, the person was able to drop all of their sins and their guilt and shame as though I did it, by the recognition that this I who did it was actually not me in the first place. And only chapter 2, Jnana Yoga, can do that. All right. Now, in chapter 5, this immediately poses a question in Arjuna's mind, because now Arjuna has heard chapter 3, which is what? Path of action. And then in chapter 4, now Krishna is saying, drop action. Right? So in other words, chapter 3, do action. Chapter 4, what's the point of action? You're not the doer. So obviously, Arjuna is now confused. Right? So he wants an answer. And Arjuna asks, wait a minute. Tell me, which one is a chapter 3 or chapter 4? Which one is better for what? Assimilation of chapter 2, which is Jnana Yoga. Because Jnana Yoga is the means to liberation. So now Arjuna, being a seeker of liberation, wants to know what is the most effective, fastest, smartest way to liberation. Is it Karma Yoga, chapter 3? Is it chapter 4, renunciation of action by knowledge? And Krishna replies, there is no better, there is no superior, it depends on your mental makeup. I.e., if you're a person who engages in a lot of action, you have a lot of disbelief, you're hesitant, you generally have tons of activity, still attracted to worldly things, still have desires, still have likes and dislikes, still have anger, still have desires, still have greed, still have all sorts of complexities in the emotional makeup, then apply chapter 3. Or if you're that one who is already calm, already contemplative, already generally thinking, already self-inquiring, already has an intellect that's able to see the depth of various scriptural statements, then go to chapter 4. So there is no superior path. It entirely depends on the person. The other thing that Krishna mentions in chapter 5 is he mentions the limitation of settling for desires. How does he demonstrate this? He demonstrates this by saying, every time I want one object, what am I saying? I don't want something else. And also, what am I saying? If I want this, what is that? Limitation. Then I don't want what? That which is ananda, limitless. Thus, every time a person pursues a worldly desire, which is in itself a limited object, providing a limited experience, which has a beginning and an end, it is silently presupposing that that one who is desiring does not want him or herself, because that limited object is more important than this limitless truth that inheres all creation. So for this reason, Krishna advises in chapter 5 a life of simplicity, which is how you summarize what renunciation is in the modern world. We're not talking about renunciation as in dropping everything, friends, family, job, so that it doesn't work. We need to adapt to the modern times. Thus, how do we adapt to the modern times? By simplifying life. What does that mean? By eliminating those variables, those principles which do not serve my full attention or my time into inquiry. For example, suppose you constantly get invited to parties, right, or weddings. You got a lot of friends. So what does this mean? How do we apply this? You say just one no at least. Okay? Because every time you say no, that is actually saying yes to whom? To yourself, so you can contemplate on the nature of the truth. How else can we do that? By refusing to speak about or engage in general gossip that people generally find interesting. It has its place, it's entertaining sometimes, but doing it all the time generally creates agitation in the mind and it becomes a big problem. Okay? So simplifying life equals a life of renunciation. Okay. Chapter 2, 3, 4, 5 done. Any questions?
That was a good summary.
That was beautiful, that last part.
All right. Chapter 6. Shall we begin? Okay, so chapter 6, I'm not going to put it on here because I'll provide before we get into the verses, we need to build up a proper framework onto which the verses will then rest on. So this session today will be about building a strong framework. Okay, chapter 6 elaborately and comprehensively goes into one of the most important spiritual sadhanas, meditation. Meditation is Dhyana Yoga. Now, meditation is for what? Okay, question. What is meditation for? in the context of the Gita. Meditation is for the assimilation and integration of the knowledge gained in the Gita teachings. It helps us to internalize the teachings gained in class. And how does this work? It works by helping the knowledge stored in the intellect. That's where the knowledge gets stored, in the intellect, right here. All knowledge, secular and sacred, is in the intellect. It helps to transfer or penetrate the knowledge stored in the intellect to the unconscious mind. That mind, which is operating 95% all day long, that is beyond our perception and our recognition. As a scientist, they will say the same. Generally, 95% of your behavior that you go through every day is 95 is coming out of where? The unconscious mind. That means 95% is autopilot. That means 95% is what? Old programs from our childhood memories, lack of love, lack of worthiness, lack of acceptance. I don't feel loved. I feel abandoned. Parents don't love me. I feel small. I am a nobody. I'm not worth it. I'm no better. I'm no good. All these conditions are stored in the unconscious, and because of their presence, they cover 95 or more % of the knowledge gained in Vedanta or any kind of class that you attend. So this means only 5% of the Gita knowledge actually gets performed consciously. And 95% of what? Our old patterns covers it all. So now the question is going to come up, or how to solve this. This is the purpose of meditation. So that means without meditation, no matter how good you are, how much you know, how filled your mind is with this knowledge, for how many years you have listened to Vedanta, it will all still remain at what? The 5% level, still superseded by the 95% of the unconscious if the meditation sadhana is not performed. Thus, you can start to see the importance of the meditation sadhana, Dhyana Yoga, chapter 6. Okay? Question. How do we transfer the knowledge from the intellect to the unconscious? That's an actual question. In relation to the Gita, how do we transfer Jnana Yoga, the vision of oneness, so that it is autopilot? You heard of the unconscious competence. What does that mean? What's unconscious competence? You are unconsciously competent. You don't think about your competence. It's like repetition. Just like driving a car. We drive a car how? We start by conscious incompetence. That means we're consciously incompetent. And then we go into conscious competence. Now we know how to, but we know what we're doing, right? We're thinking about, we're aware. And then we go into, when we practice, as you said, we go into what? Unconscious competence. And that's when what? Conscious competence, the conscious driving, thinking how to change the gear, looking for the blind spots, seeing if there's any danger, constantly aware and alert, constantly the mind's engaged. Over time, through practice, abhyasa, right? Abhyaso nahi tyavo, abhyaso nahi parambalam. That's what we just sang. That means practice. By constant practice, this constant activity in the conscious gets transferred to the unconscious mind. So, again, I'm going to ask the question, how do we transfer this knowledge that we're learning in class, no matter how many years of knowledge you got of this, into the unconscious? The answer is, you have to do something.
Keep your attention on it.
Now, that question is going to be, do what? And I will give you a metaphor. Imagine your spouse makes you, I wonder if we have more sugar or honey lovers here. I like honey, so I'll say honey and tea. Imagine your spouse makes you a tea, your favorite tea, and he or she puts honey and then gives it to you. And then you drink it. And you say, well, this is, go put some honey. This is not sweet. And she says, honey, I put some honey. No, there's no honey in here. No, honey, you need to do what?
Stir.
You need to stir it. That means no matter how much honey is at the bottom, no matter how much knowledge, how many years of experience we have, unless you, quote, do something, as I said, that honey, that knowledge is going to remain at the bottom. Thus, what do? We mix the knowledge with what? The tea being a representation of your mind. It's your being. And what happens when you mix the honey with the tea? The whole tea as though was always sweet. So that means we have to apply meditation in order to what? Mix the self-knowledge with the mind so we can actually embody it, so we can actualize it, and it becomes as a normal living reality without having to think about it, called unconscious competence. Thus, if your problem is, and you say to yourself, I know all of this, I've heard this before, I am very smart, I know what Tattva Viveka is, I know what Atma is, I know what Mithya is, I know all of this, I've heard all these terms, but somehow, and I even know what's, I'm even confident in my knowledge, I have no doubts. So in other words, you've done everything. But somehow you say, I still don't fully appreciate what it means to say, I am immortal, I am limitless, I am full, I am whole, I am complete, there's nothing missing. In other words, there is still something missing. I still associate myself partially with the not I, anatma, body, mind, intellect, despite doing all the work. Why is that? What's the gap? Not stirring the knowledge with the mind. Meditation in chapter 6 in the Bhagavad Gita is the essence of all meditation in the Upanishads, because the Bhagavad Gita is not an independent text. The Bhagavad Gita is written based on the Upanishads. So this means whatever meditation we talk about now is the meditation that is mentioned throughout all the Upanishads, okay? So before we start, we need to first mention what meditation is not, okay? We're not even going to begin, because if we begin, then there's going to be some ideas due to the wonderful spiritual marketplace imbuing us with all sorts of funny ideas, what meditation is, how it's supposed to be, what is supposed to happen, and what is not supposed to happen. Thus, this session for the next couple of minutes will be about clearing these false notions so you are free of these ideas. Okay. So we can put 3 things meditation is not. Point 1. Meditation is not a means of liberation. Meditation cannot produce moksha. That pretty much wipes out 90% of all the meditation sales gurus. I know, I mean, tons of them. The whole market is about, let me give you a special mantra. You just focus on your Sahasrara, your Ajna. Breathe up and down the Sushumna, your spine. The Kriya Yogis. Yeah. And then over some time, you will somehow magically gain enlightenment. These are normal ideas. So point 1, meditation is not a means to liberation. Why not? According to the Upanishads, our intrinsic nature is meditation. We are meditation. That means you cannot get something which you already are. Moksha, liberation, is an already accomplished fact. Everyone's already liberated. There's no such thing as an ignorant person. Only an ignorant person will call another person ignorant. Everyone is already liberated. Why is everyone liberated? Because consciousness pervades the entire existence, including the person who is saying everyone's ignorant. So obviously they're not recognizing consciousness, thus they're witnessing themselves as the body-mind, thus they're calling another body-mind, and they're saying they're ignorant. Okay, moksha is an already accomplished fact, so everyone's already liberated, whether you believe it or not. This is called praptasya prapti. Praptasya, this is a Sanskrit term. Praptasya prapti means an already accomplished fact. For example, I put a pen on my ear, and my friend calls me, and I talk to my friend, and then I have a really cool conversation, and then, you know, so much has happened, and I put my phone down. I'm like, all right, let's get back to work, right? And I'm like, oh, okay, come on, I need to hurry, I need to get this done. And I'm looking around, where's my pen? Oh my God, where's my pen? And then over some time, I go and I start some meditation circles. You know, I need to meditate to transcend this person who's worrying because I don't have what I'm looking for. And then I go into some charity, you know, donate some money and give away my money because they will help me with a technique to help me discover where the pen is, right? So I pretty much lose all my life savings. I go on pilgrimages, you know, up and down the mountains. I hear all sorts of different ideas. Everyone's offering me an idea how to discover this pen. And then an ordinary person one day comes and says, excuse me, the pen's on your ear. And then you say, oh, I already had what I was looking for all along. Thus, moksha, liberation, is praptasya prapti, that which is already accomplished. And who is that? You are. For that reason, meditation cannot provide moksha, because to say it provides moksha is to contradict the nature, which is that everything is already one and the same Brahman. Okay? So the only fact, or the only pramana, means of knowledge that can liberate is self-knowledge. Now, even, by the way, self-knowledge cannot liberate unless you what? Okay? Suppose I got this knowledge, right? Already liberated. And people tell me, you already have what you're looking for. And I just go, cool, thanks. Right? And I continue my work. So what does that mean? Even self-knowledge is useless unless I apply it properly. Okay? And we're going to talk about how to apply self-knowledge properly, extensively, in this session and the next. Okay, point 2. Meditation is not prescribed for gaining knowledge. Meditation is not a means of knowledge, neither for secular nor sacred knowledge. For example, in school, when we wanted to learn mathematics, did we meditate for mathematics, or did we listen? Did we learn from books? Did we, go through the formulas? Or did we just sit down and meditate and somehow expect the formulas to come into our minds? This idea is false. Because meditation, where are you going to get the knowledge from? A blank mind that doesn't know the nature of the self cannot suddenly get a nature of the self from a blank mind. That's just common sense. So meditation is not a means of knowledge. There are 6 means of knowledge, and they have been the same in the past, the present, and the future. So when I say 6 means of knowledge, this means there are only 6 ways by which you gain knowledge about anything, and I'm going to mention them very quickly. The first one is perception. In Sanskrit, we call this pratyaksha. You don't have to put the Sanskrit down. Perception, pratyaksha, very simple. I hold a pen, and you say, I see it through one of my senses. I see it through my eyes, I hear it through my ears, smell it, nose, and so on. I feel it through the skin. So, pratyaksha that means I gain knowledge of the world by relying on the range upon which my senses can capture. That means that if my senses are outside the range of infrared or gamma rays, then the eye says there is nothing, there's no such thing. So for that reason, we have what? Instruments which amplify our instruments or organs of our organs. For example, the telescope amplifies the eye. The stethoscope, I think it's the stethoscope, amplifies the sound, and so on. Okay. The second means of knowledge is inference. Inference in Sanskrit is anumana. Anumana. Anumana means, definition of anumana is known after. So what does this mean to say known after? After knowing about what? The smoke, I infer its relatable cause being the fire. So that means inference relies firstly on my perception, and then when I perceive, then I make a connection by what I perceive, and I attribute a cause onto the effect. That's called inference. Number 3 is comparison, analogy, or metaphor. Upamana. Upamana. We use this all the time in class. For example, I say Brahman is like the sun shining independently of whatever happens on earth. Whether the earth exists or not, Brahman continues shining as though the presence of the earth was there or wasn't there. It makes no difference to Brahman. So we constantly use these metaphors to gain knowledge. The next one is postulation or presumption. It means you presume. This is arthapati. For example, a fat person tells me, I do not eat during the day. So then what do?
Presuming someone.
Yeah, so that means his or her fatness cannot be explained by any other way, considering the deduction of the day has been removed, except then to deduce or to presume that it has to be eaten during the night. Okay, that's number 4. Number 5 is non-perception. This is called anupalabhi. Anupalabhi. Okay, what does non-perception mean? I'll give you an example, but the definition is the non-existence of an object causes me to perceive its non-perception. I know it's a tricky one. Non-existence of something allows me to perceive its non-perception. We do this all the time. For example, we walk into a class and we say what? There's no teacher. In other words, I did not see the teacher, but then I perceived the teacher and then I said there's no teacher. Or I smell the flower and I say what? There's no fragrance. By the non-existence of the fragrance, I perceived the fragrance.
The classic is going into a restaurant and seeing nobody in there.
Yeah.
And you come to the presumption.
Where are the customers?
The food's probably not very good.
Yeah, right? There you go. Like, what does that have to do with food? Well, how did you come up with that? By the environment. Okay, and the last one is Shastra or Shabda. This is testimonies from previous experts. And our Shastra is the Upanishads, Bhagavad Gita, and the Brahma Sutras. Okay, this means that this knowledge is gained from those who have come before us, have already taken generations to deduce, to infer, have applied different means of knowledge in order to come up with observations, investigating experience, and have written it down, and it's now available for us. Okay, that's what Shastra is. Okay. So nowhere in these 6 is meditation mentioned. Did you notice that? Yeah. So meditation is not a means of knowledge. Okay, third point, meditation is not meant for mystical or extraordinary experiences. Let's just say it's not prescribed for extraordinary or mystical experiences. Okay, why? Because every experience is finite in nature. Every experience belongs to the objective reality, which we call Vyavaharika or Ishvara Srishti. Okay? So this means every experience that we have in meditation is subject to beginning, sustenance, and ending. No matter how extraordinary or amazing it is, the truth is it is still limited by its very beginning. So we are not, by the way, discarding experiences in the nature of mysticism or extraordinary, because for a lot of sadhakas, for a lot of seekers, they can be a very good pointer to the truth. We can have experiences that resemble non-duality or ego death, or moments of not being concerned about anything, just being free. And that alone can help the person to give them some hope, to uplift them, to encourage them to keep going. So once again, we cannot discard anything because everyone has something to gain out of everything. But just know that experience in the mystical nature or extraordinary is not prescribed in Vedic meditation. Okay, so this means also that since the experience belongs to where? Mithya, that means whatever knowledge I gain, or whatever epiphany I get out of this experience is going to be where? In the realm of Mithya. And Mithya does not touch Satyam. There are two different orders of reality. So this means that an experience can only be a pointer, but it does not touch the truth. Understand that? Which means that if the person keeps coming back to experiences one after the other, what does that mean? They're still after finite objects, still after samsarish objects. Okay, so one hasn't really solved the problem at all. They're still continuing samsara, just in a more sublime version of samsara. If you to imagine a circle, in the center is very dense, very heavy. And the more you go out of the circle, you got like level 1, 2, 3, 4, all the way to 10. A meditator who doesn't have the full knowledge, all they're doing is just going from 1 all the way to 10. And they have this amazing experience of samadhi, and then they say, wow, I'm enlightened. But all one has really done is gone to the level 10 of what? Mithya. They have not even touched Satyam. So that's the limitation of experiences. Okay, is that clear? So 3, is there any disagreement so far about what meditation is not?
So the way I'm hearing it is that meditation cannot be the source of knowledge, but it could be the means of knowledge that's already been gained by stirring it.
Exactly. It's not the source, but it helps to make sense of the knowledge already gained through and by the means of Shastra, through the Upanishads. Okay, so you need to have knowledge, and only then can one meditate. Otherwise, what is one going to meditate on? Well, the answer to that is whatever they think they should meditate on, which is still what? Samsara. Also, a mature meditator, one who has the knowledge, what happens is over some time, they lose interest in experiences. So every time there's an extraordinary experience, the person simply discards it as what? Anatman, and goes back to that one in whose presence this object of experience is known to, which is always you, nobody else. So this means a mature meditator always differentiates the experience from the witness of the experience. Okay, and this comes through time. The next topic that we'll speak of is what is the role of meditation. Okay, this is a new topic. What is the role of meditation, or what is the purpose of meditation according to Shastra? 2 parts. Number 1, preparatory meditation. This is called Upasanam Dhyanam. And still while you're on number 1, put an arrow from preparatory meditation to Shravanam. So Upasanam Dhyanam leads to Shravanam, and Shravanam, in brackets, we can put gathering knowledge. And Mananam. In brackets, we can put conviction, because Mananam is removing doubts, thus removal of doubts leads to conviction of the knowledge. Okay? So number 1, Upasanam Dhyanam, which is preparatory meditation, leads to Shravanam and leads to Mananam. And number 2, so that was all number 1, okay? Number 2 is Nididhyasanam Dhyanam. Nididhyasanam Dhyanam. You can translate this as removing false notions. Nididhyasanam Dhyanam. What kind of false notions? Childhood issues. Not only childhood issues, but also past life. Because we're born with samskaras, and samskaras get carried over, and these samskaras also are a hindrance to the assimilation. So 1 and 2, Nididhyasanam Dhyanam, removing false notions. Okay, let's talk about now Upasanam Dhyanam and what it is. Upasanam Dhyanam is preparatory meditation, and the purpose of it is to prepare the mind, to mature the mind, to refine the mind, to create an integrated mind, ready to digest the knowledge. How do we explain this in real life? In accelerated learning, right? If you know a little bit about how to remember, what's the first thing they recommend in if you want to have a good memory, if you want to be a good student? Prepare, right? Mindset. How do you do that? Take your brain to an alpha brain state, have some classical music playing in the background, make sure you're relaxed, make sure your food isn't too rajasic, too spicy. And so you do what? You make some preparations before diving into the subject matter. Thus, Upasanam Dhyanam is creating those preparations in order to what? Digest the knowledge in the process of Shravanam. So the simple analogy is, before you're doing anything, you always what? Relax. Imagine after a car crash, you come straight into the class. Right? There's no way, because the mind is going to be totally on the incident. So the person's mindset has to be prepared. So that's what Upasanam Dhyanam is. So this creates a qualified person, a qualified student, Upasanam Dhyanam. Just like, for example, before you want to plant something, imagine you have a really nice seed, like a beautiful seed that will produce you a big harvest that you can feed yourself off for many years. And it's a magic bean, right? And this bean, if you plant it, is going to grow into some clouds and you can climb up into heaven, right? Now imagine you get the seed and then you plant it into a soil that has no nutrition and is completely dry. How's that going to work out for you? 0. So this means we need to create a fertile soil, Upasanam Dhyanam, before planting seeds of knowledge in the stage of Shravanam. Similarly, we need to have a fertile mind by the means of Upasanam Dhyanam in order to comprehend and assimilate self-knowledge gained in class and through your own solo study. Okay? The good part about Upasanam Dhyanam is meditation is not the only sadhana for Upasanam Dhyanam. There are hundreds of available methods to prepare your mind. Karma yoga is one. We have many different modalities in the world from different therapies, different points of views. You got things like NLP, psychology. You've got doing your favorite thing, your hobby, Some of us like to do something, so it keeps our mind very calm. So Upasana Dhyanam is not limited to just meditation. It is only limited to, well, it's not limited at all. It's just whatever you prefer to keep your mind calm. Okay?
I think an expression I was found helpful is that your mind tends to follow, well, will follow your attention, and that's why we don't use the word attention much in
Which word?
attention.
Yeah.
Your attention
Yeah.
is really the point, the sharp end of where the mind follows, if you know what I mean. So purifying the attention or keeping the attention focused
Good.
is where everything else follows.
Good. So Upasana Dhyanam helps with keeping the attention one-pointed. As I said with that accident example, if a person comes into the class, they're going to be thinking about 10 points of focus. One, how I'm going to pay the fella, what I'm going to do tomorrow with my car, how am I going to get out of this one, am I okay, how are they, what I'm going to do with my car, how much is it going to cost, and out of these 10 points of focus, no way, nothing's going to go in. So, as Marston very well put, Upasana Dhyanam also focuses the mind on one single point, which is ideal for ingesting knowledge. Now, let's talk about Shravanam. Okay, after Upasana is done, it means what? It means that my mind is primed to receive the knowledge. And it also then leads to the clarity of the mind to accept the knowledge and understand it without doubting it. So these two parts need a certain mind, okay? And the mind that we need is one that is calm. As we said, one-pointed attention. How do you gain self-knowledge? So I'll give you an example of self-knowledge. Just imagine your eye can see everything in creation, right? Whatever you show to your eye, it can see. So that means at any time, no matter what you present in front of your eye, you're going to see. But what is the one thing that it cannot see?
Darkness.
Huh?
Darkness.
The eye.
You can't see the
By itself.
Yeah.
See itself.
So the eye can see everything in creation, in the past, in the present, and in the future. Whatever you show it, whatever you display, whatever you demonstrate to the eye, it will immediately recognize it accurately without any effort, spontaneously. And yet the only principle in the entire creation which we cannot see or recognize is the very principle that can recognize everything else but itself. So, what is the only way how to see the eye? There's only one way to see the eye. The only way to see the eye is by a mirror. Not even through murky water, because if I see the eye through murky water, it's going to sort of look like something, but it's not going to give me a perfect, accurate what it actually is. Thus, there is only one way I can accurately see what the eye is by the means of the mirror. Similarly, I pose the question, what is self-knowledge? Before that, I said Upasana Yoga leads to what? Shravanam and Mananam. So thus, how do you gain Shravanam? By self-knowledge. And what is self-knowledge? It is that means which by its nature is able to reveal the self because its subject matter is self. That's why we call it self-knowledge. The self-knowledge is like the mirror. That means the only principle that can reveal the self is self-knowledge, which means you can meditate for 15,000 hours if you want. Nothing's going to happen, right? Because you're just going to meditate on whatever is present. But you need the proper means of knowledge to help you see who and what you are and who and what you are not. Okay? So we can now see how meditation cannot help us with bringing knowledge, only assimilating the knowledge. Okay. Now the question is going to come up, and that is, so what if I have a mirror? because we have a problem now. What if you don't know how to use a mirror? Because what if I take a mirror and I look at it, you know, like we use a mirror like this, but suppose I don't know how to use a mirror, so I look at it like that. And then it fails, does it not? So this means we need to know how to use self-knowledge so that by its use it will lead to productive results, the proper assimilation of knowledge. So the question is, how, now the next topic, how to use the mirror. And if you don't use the mirror, what's going to happen? Then Vedanta is going to fail. No matter how many years of this listening, it's going to fail. It's not going to work. What is Shravanam? Shravanam is systematic and consistent study of Vedanta for a length of time under the guidance of a competent acharya, a competent teacher. That's the definition of Shravanam. Metaphor. What means of knowledge is a metaphor, by the way? Remember comparison, analogy? Number 3, right?
Yeah.
So now I'm going to give you number 3 to show you what Shravanam is. You can see how we're learning. We're using these means of knowledge. That's why I asked the question. We're using these means of knowledge to help us learn. So what is Shravanam? Suppose somebody tells you, you got beautiful eyes. You got beautiful eyes. You got pretty eyes. Your eyes are amazing. They're clear. I've never seen better eyes. I love your eyes. Beautiful eyes. Beautiful eyes. And then what are you going to say? You know, I keep hearing I've got beautiful eyes, but I don't buy it. I need to see for myself. So then what do? You go buy a mirror to see the eyes for yourself. And what is a mirror? Self-knowledge. So, in order to see the eyes, in order to see my nature, Atman, I go and get a mirror. That is, I go to Shravanam, knowledge, and it shows me what my nature is. It shows me the eye. Okay? That's Shravanam.
So Shravanam is the mirror.
Shravanam is a mirror by which one can see the eye. Means the only means of knowledge to see the eye is the mirror. There is one essential aspect of Shravanam, and if this aspect is missed, Shravanam is not going to work. Okay, what happens when you learn something for the first time? You have doubts, right? It's kind of true, it kind of makes sense, but I'm not convinced. So then what arises? Doubts. So what happens if you don't write your doubts down? You think they're going to get solved? No. They're going to remain sooner or later, and they're going to pop up, or they're going to go back into the unconscious, and the unconscious is what, 95% that sabotages one's success. So therefore, in order for Shravanam to work, that means while gaining the knowledge, one needs to write down all of their doubts that come throughout the day. See, when a doubt comes, it's actually an amazing opportunity, because a doubt comes when you have a sattvic mind, a very clear mind. So use your phone. It's funny, we use our phones for everything other than the most important. So use your phone, pull out your phone, and just quickly create a file called File of Doubts. And then quickly type in the doubt and just put it back. Just the mere act of writing your doubts down will add, you could say, 10,000% effectiveness to accumulation and assimilation of knowledge. Get into the habit of writing it down. Because later on, when you see these doubts, it will be an utter joy seeing how they're addressed, and some of them are not. And those which are not, you can ask your fellow Vedantins, or you can ask a teacher. That's the whole point of Shravanam, to gain knowledge, and by the gaining of knowledge, as soon as a doubt comes, even if it's in a toilet, then hold that thought and do not let it go. Do not let it go. Right? Make sure you get it out on paper or phone as soon as you finish your business. Okay? There's just incredible power in writing your doubts down. So please remember this very important aspect of Shravanam.
A good way as well, if you're driving, like I do a lot in the car, you can just go to Siri, say Siri, new note, doubt.
Yeah,
Say it.
you just say it, yeah. Anything just to give tangibility to it, okay? Once you've gained doubts by the acquisition of knowledge, you now go into what? Doubt clearing. Oh, you're not going to leave these doubts there, are you? You want to solve them on the spot, or maybe later. Just give it some time. Let the brain work on it. So this stage of doubt clearing is called mananam. Doubt clarification. It's also called samshaya nivritti. Samshaya nivritti is doubt disappearance. So this stage is about making your doubts disappear. How? Raising questions and creating answers until the resolution of the doubt is complete. Very simple.
I found an interesting cycle that sort of happens there between the intellect creating a doubt and the ahamkara holding on to that doubt as a way of holding you back.
Yeah.
And just as soon as you think you've got it, the intellect will find one little chink somewhere that you haven't fully resolved, and the ahamkara will hang on to that chink and expand it out.
It's also very tempting, right, to not want to write it down because we think it's okay, I'll solve. It's not a big deal. It's just a small doubt. It's only appearing now. It's going to be solved tomorrow. It's not. So fall in love with writing your doubts down. That's all. Okay. So this stage of doubt clarification is called mananam, which means removing doubt in or regarding the gathered knowledge from stage 1, Shravanam. And discover how this fact or this verse or this piece of knowledge which you are having a doubt about, discover how it's actually true for you and how it validates your experience. That's your job, through your effort, through your questions and answers. The point of the Upanishads is not to look at the Upanishads and disagree with them. The point of the Upanishads is to see how to understand the world exactly as the Upanishads or the Gita is saying. That's your mission. That's your job in this process. Because the Upanishads have already been through a rigorous process of being doubted, being attempted to be negated by alternative schools of thought. They've already gone through generations of trying to destroy the knowledge. And it's unsuccessful. Just like if you take E equals mc squared formula, what happened? How does this popularize? Because the creator of this formula went to a scientific panel and he presented this formula, created hypotheses, postulations, how this formula cannot be negated. And what did the science panel do? They used their knowledge, their different schools of knowledge, to negate E equals mc squared and discovered it is non-negatable. Thus, Upanishads is in the same way, just like E equals mc squared. No matter from what angle, from what school you attack it from, you cannot negate these statements. Thus, your job is not to doubt these statements, but to recognize how can I align my vision directly as the Upanishads are saying. So mananam is basically a stage whereby one's listening to knowledge and parallel to the knowledge, there's what? Doubt. And that doesn't work. So this parallel process that we undergo, this parallel process has to be written down in order to address it through knowledge. Okay? And this is the same for every single, no one's excluded from this process. No matter what topic of endeavor you go into, you will always have an experience of knowledge, and parallel to the knowledge is what? Doubt. And what's the difference between an A+ student and a C student?
Resolving the doubt.
Exactly. An A+ student looks at their doubts. They say, how is it that I'm not understanding this? How can I understand this? What am I missing? What am I not looking at? From which angle can I look at this from? That by looking at it that angle, I can gain the knowledge which I wasn't looking at before. Is there alternative ways of looking at this? And who can I ask for alternative ways? Whereas the C student just goes, I don't get this, it's okay. You know, the teacher was going to explain it in class. No. Because the doubt is your job. In fact, 90% of doubts get resolved by your own effort. Only 10% get done through other teammates and through a teacher. So self-knowledge gets weakened by doubts. If there's a parallel of self-knowledge and doubt, then it weakens the self-knowledge. Okay? And we don't want weak self-knowledge. We need self-knowledge to be firm. And how do we make it firm? Raising questions and creating answers in regards to the doubt until the doubt is completely removed. This is your job. You know what's the biggest doubt for everyone, generally, in regards to this area? Why should I believe the scriptures? Right? Why? Because our experience tells otherwise. Why does it tell otherwise? Because our experience goes uninquired from day one of our birth. We never inquire into our experience. Suddenly, when Vedanta comes in and mentions these amazing ideas, like you are free, you're limitless, you're already whole and complete, you're immortal, the person's like, are you kidding me? I'm mortal, I'm small, I'm a nobody. And Vedanta, I have tons of desires. And Vedanta is saying, you're free of desires. So it's a total contradiction. For this reason, the natural doubt is what the scriptures are saying. So these doubts have to be removed one by one. How? Test question. How do you resolve doubts?
Self-inquiry.
Raising
Questions.
raising questions and creating answers. Okay? As long as it takes. That's the difference between an A+ student and a C student. You want to be a C or an A+. So the process of mananam, what does it do? It converts, okay, question. What does mananam do? It converts self-knowledge, gained where? In stage 1, shravanam, to knowledge of conviction, called nishchaya jnanam. It converts the knowledge gained in class to knowledge of conviction. And this knowledge is not gained through meditation, it is gained through shravanam and mananam. Okay? We're building up to meditation, by the way. You're thinking, how does this all relate? We're building up, we're creating a framework. Okay, question, where does all knowledge happen? In your heart or in your intellect? Well, they're linked actually. But most knowledge, all knowledge happens, you need the intellect available in order to think, to rationalize.
It all has to happen in the brain.
The brain is a physical, gross body providing the capacity for the subtle body.
But presumably the memory would store the knowledge that you've been taking in, and the intellect would draw on that memory to actually process.
Intellect also draws the memory, yeah, and then processes, makes sense of it.
So when you say heart, do you mean emotions?
Yeah, but emotion is obviously used to help the intellect make sense. But generally, okay, proof. What happens when you intoxicate a person? Can they think rationally? Impossible. Their intellect goes down. They're unable to see clearly and assess what needs to be done. But what's heightened? Emotions. So and is a person acting smart when they're intoxicated? No. So that's what I meant. The intellect happens in the knowledge happens in the intellect. So what does this mean for us? This means your sadhana is one that helps the intellect remain sharp, because that's your only refuge. Where is self-knowledge known, and where do you know the direct statement, I am Atman? Like direct. Where is that known? In the intellect. There's no other place. And even if one doesn't know that means they're ajnani. Where are they contemplating in order to reach to that point? In the intellect. That's all you got. So in other words, intellect is our only refuge here. That's why in Vedanta you got to be sharp. Okay, what language does the intellect speak? Reason. You rationalize. How do you rationalize? You rationalize and you create postulations, you create options, you create possibilities which by their existence you come to a conclusion to match the statement from the Upanishad. Okay? So this means rationalization is the language of the intellect, which means what for us? You need to rationalize, how is this true? Why is this true? Why do I not believe this? How can I get myself to believe this? What is the obstacle preventing me from believing this? What am I missing? What am I not missing? This is all intellect. So this means one gets really good at asking questions. Where is the knowledge I and Ishvara enjoy the same reality, Brahman? Where is this knowledge? Is this in the memory? For a jnani, is this in the memory? The mind or the intellect?
It's the intellect.
Yeah. Because if it's a memory, what's the problem with that?
You forget.
Exactly. So that means it's good. That means it's only true while you're remembering, right? Excellent. Okay, so this means that the intellect has to assimilate this knowledge. And for example, your knowledge how to drive a car, where is that? Is that in your emotions? Do you like feel, oh, the car is touching the ground. I'm feeling the ground.
It doesn't drive the gearbox.
Or you use what? You use your intellect. And what does the intellect do? It measures the situation constantly, assesses car coming, what do I need to do to move to keep myself safe? Or are you going to your heart and feeling other drivers? No. So you're using your intellect, right? So that means if you really want to be good at something, then what? The intellect has to be sharp and available. Chinmaya has a wonderful story to demonstrate this, and I'll share the story. The problem, and what's the point of this story? What happens if you apply Shravanam and not Mananam? So, there is a man who is afraid of birds. Do you know why? He thinks he's a worm. Okay? So, he doesn't want to go out. And he needs help. So he goes to a therapist. Obviously, he goes, out of his house, straight into the car, straight into the hospital. No exposure to the outside because he's afraid the bird is going to eat him because the birds eat worms, right? And he thinks he's a worm. So he goes to the therapist and says, "Hey, Mr. Therapist, I need help. I'm a worm." And the therapist says, "No, you're not." "No, I am a worm." So then obviously the therapist now, thinks, how do I solve this problem? So the therapist applies some Shravanam knowledge. And what is the Shravanam knowledge in this situation? The therapist says, he puts a worm on the plate and goes, "This is worm. Do you look like this?" And then the man says, "Absolutely not." So then where's the relation between you and the worm? Well, you got a good point, therapist. I never thought about it that way, right? So now the man is like, it's got a good point. I don't share any features of the worm. I can talk, the worm cannot talk. So it's pretty clear that my nature is not what I thought it was. My nature is not a worm. My nature is a human being. So the therapist asks, "So what's your nature, sir?" "Based on seeing this evidence, I am a human being. My true nature is a human being." So the therapist is super happy to hear this. And then the therapist discharges the man out. As soon as the doors of the hospital open, you know how in front of the hospital there's always nice palm trees and parks you can hang out? So obviously the man sees a bird, so he turns back. It goes back to the therapist and says, the therapist, "And what are you doing here?" "There's a bird on the tree." "What's the problem? I thought you were a human being." And then the man says, "Sir, I know my true nature is a human being, but the worm in me doesn't know that. You haven't treated the worm in me. Similarly, even though we can get the nature of the self and we can be very convinced about it, there is something inside us, a Mr. or Mrs. Worm, that it still is not convinced. And until we convince that little worm that the nature of the self is limitless Ananda, we will walk around in this world like little small insignificant worms who make no difference. So, what is the worm a metaphor for? A doubt. How do you remove doubts? Raising and answering questions based on the worms which you have written down on your little paper or phone until every single worm is extinguished. And only you alone can do this. This also means that it doesn't matter how good the knowledge is, provided or imparted by somebody else. All that matters is it a living reality for you? If it's not a living reality, then it is as good as useless. So this means your job is to constantly address the doubts in relation to what? In relation to the unconscious patterns which are constantly singing how I'm insecure, small, worthless, I'm not good enough, I don't matter, I'm a nobody, everyone's better than I am, I make no difference, I don't have any energy, I'm too old, I'm too small, I'm too young. It's just endless. These doubts have to be written down, and then you need to what? Apply Vedanta knowledge onto them until the worm is destroyed. Similarly, if a person, a jnani, knows one's true nature as the self, immortal, limitless, ananda, then what happens? Despite an ajnani coming over and saying, you're just a small little worm, you're mortal, you're small, you're unenlightened, you need to go and learn. Does that make any difference to the jnani? Absolutely not. Why? Because the jnani has solved the problem. And thus only the jnani knows what the jnani knows. Nobody else knows what the jnani knows. For that reason, we cannot say, and we don't have the right to judge other people because we don't know what they know or don't know. All that matters is, have you understood? Right? Does this make a difference in your life? Is this transforming your life? That's all that matters at the end of the day. Objection. Hey, isn't this knowledge intellectual? Yeah, it is. So, where else do you know things other than the intellect? But I'm not talking about intellectual knowledge as in object known to me, but I'm talking about intellectual knowledge as understanding, that is unconscious competence. No different than the knowledge that you have of driving a car. Where is that knowledge right now? In the intellect. So yes, it is intellectual, but it's not an intellectual knowledge as in apart from me. It is knowledge intellectual as direct, non-separate comprehension and understanding of it without having to think about it. So yes, it is intellectual, it is cerebral at the beginning, but what happens? This knowledge still becomes part of the intellect.
It's the difference between applied knowledge and academic knowledge.
Exactly, very good example. What is the result of Shravanam and Mananam? The result is proper application of Shravanam and doubt removal in Mananam. What's the result? Liberation. Jeevan Muktihi. You probably heard the difference between Jeevan Muktaha and Jeevan Muktihi. What's the difference? A Jeevan Muktihi means liberation, and Jeevan Muktaha means one who is liberated. So we can use these words interchangeably. What does liberation mean?
Free from the
Yeah?
free from the
The word freedom is good. Freedom from... Actually, give me some more ideas. What does liberation mean?
Doubt. So freedom from doubt.
Freedom from doubt.
Who you
Good,
are.
yep, good,
Freedom
got it.
from attachments.
Good,
Freedom from the ups and downs of life.
excellent.
Freedom from limitation.
Acceptance of change.
That's practical level, so that's also applicable. Okay, liberation is freedom from inner problems independent of external circumstances. Now, how is this possible? It's possible because all problems belong to whom? Onto what are the problems exposed onto? The Stula Sukshma Karana Sharira. Now the I has disassociated from the Stula Sukshma Karana Sharira, thus the problems are not mine, the problems are Andre's. But the I remains a witness to the problems. That's why a liberated person is one who is free of inner problems. What does inner problems point to? The subtle body, because you experience all your problems in the subtle body. Freedom from that. Why? Because the I has shifted away from ahamkara, the false self, to the witness, to the self, sakshi, atman, and because of that we say freedom from inner problems, despite circumstances being troubled on the outside. Because those circumstances trouble who? The individual, not I. What is a person that is liberated free from? Raga, dvesha, number one, likes and dislikes. 2, kama, desire and lust. 3, krodha, anger. 4, lobha, greed. 5, attachment, moha. 6, mada, pride. 7, envy or jealousy, matsarya. So a wise person is free from all of these. And where are those emotions located in? The subtle body. How do you define a Jeevan Mukta? We can also say a Jeevan Mukta is a saint. So in this context, we can say one who has saintlyhood or saintliness is a Jeevan Mukta. The Gita gives us many definitions, but we can just say, we can subsume them in just one single statement. A liberated person or a saint is incapable of being hurt nor hurting others. Or put it this way, incapable of being hurt by external situation nor capable of hurting others. This statement is going to raise so much confusion if it's not explained. Suppose the first part, what did I say? Incapable of being hurt by external situations, right? Let's just address that part. Imagine if you just say this to a jnani, what are they going to think? So that person is what? They're invincible to emotions, they're invincible to hurt. Yeah, the cold, heat. They are a strong man, they're a superman. They don't go through any kind of hardships in life. They have no emotions. They're in total bliss. No matter what happens, their house can burn down. They're still happy because hey, they're unable to be hurt by external situations. If their leg gets cut off, they're like, who cares? It's not mine, right? So all of these ideas are going to now come because of this one single statement. So the statement is incapable of being hurt by external situations. But what am I really talking about when I say that?
Renunciation.
Mentally he won't be disturbed.
Mentally, yeah.
Satyam has no connection to mithya. The wise person, the saint, the jnani's I is what? Satyam, the truth of existence. That means, can you hurt Satyam? Can you touch Satyam? But what did I say? A jnani is one who cannot be hurt by external situations. To which order of reality does external situations belong to? Mithya. Thus, whatever happens to a jnani's body, not to the jnani's body does get hurt, but to the jnani, he or she does not get hurt. Because you cannot hurt existence, you cannot hurt consciousness. Now, what was the second part? And is incapable, so is part 1 clear now? Part 2, incapable of hurting others. Another list of misconceptions. So let's do some misconceptions. So this means, now, this instantly gives me like features how a jnani looks like. Right? They're totally kind, they never raise their voice, They're very huggy, they love everyone, they treat everyone the same, they're smiley, they're never, unhappy, they always got a big smile, cheerful, they're always joyous, and they just cannot inflict any hurt onto the environment. That's the natural conclusion. By whom? By one who sees the jnani as a body, mind, intellect, but that's not what we're talking about. What are we talking about when I say incapable of hurting others? Incapable of hurting others. Who is capable of hurting others? The jnani's body, jnani's vasanas, jnani's conditions. That is what hurts, not the jnani. So the jnani does have a body, does have a mind, doesn't have an intellect, and it has its own desires and needs, but the jnani is not associated to that which steps on the end and hurts the environment, to that which raises the voice and hurts the child, to that which eats maybe some meat and then supposedly it's himsa. The jnani is disassociated from the principle which manages the world, which is exposed to the world. Thus, does this statement now make sense? 100%? A wise person is incapable of being hurt by other people. Why? Because that one who has knowledge is disassociated from the body, mind, intellect. Thus, whatever happens to the body, mind, intellect does not happen to me. It happened to my body, mind, intellect. Next part is incapable of hurting others. So suppose the wise person now, says something rude to the other person. Who said that? Did the body, mind, intellect say that, or consciousness?
Combination of all.
No, consciously.
No, because there's no association. That's the body doing its work according to what? The environment. For example, suppose there's a thunderstrike and you run. Did you run? Or the body responded to the environment to protect itself? The body responded to the environment to protect itself. But we think I did it. So the body still does action, but if I am not the body, then what? The body did the action, I just witnessed the body going from thunder to protection. Does that make sense?
I was under the... Can I ask a question? I was under the idea that after reaching Nirvana, you exist because of the compassion for others. So in that way, you do care for your body because you are existing for others. So you eat that much, so that you can exist, just enough to exist, right? But you don't, overeat or you don't overindulge in things. But you just want to exist for the, goodwill, for to help others.
That's mixing up mithya and satyam.
Okay.
Mithya is vyavaharika, the objective reality has nothing to do with paramartika, with the reality of satyam. That belongs all to reality of the body, mind, intellect, mithya. So the person can be compassionate or they may not be as well. It doesn't really matter.
Okay. Could you say that if you're identifying with consciousness in the situation of other people, you're expressing compassion through the Advaita?
Liberation means I've already gone through the compassion process. That means by the time one comes to Advaita Vedanta, they already have general compassion and understanding for the world. If you didn't, you wouldn't be interested in this. Right? So in order to gain this knowledge, you have to first be exercising proper ethics, proper compassion and empathy for other people. So this is already taken care of. So the question doesn't really apply, because to say that is to go back to the stage of what? Dharma. But we're in moksha stage. We're, the artha, kama, dharma. We're in the moksha stage. So that means we've already gone through the stage of dharma. And dharma is compassion. So that means by the time someone comes to the stage of moksha, they already have compassion. So we can't really say liberation now causes one to become super compassionate. Right? Because that's the mind. But I'm not the mind, intellect, body. So I don't tell the body, mind, intellect what to do. If the body, mind, intellect wants to be compassionate, so be it. If not, then that's not going to be the case. Is this making sense?
So is it to do with acceptance of whatever the subtle body is? and just witnessing.
Yeah, that's a good point. Acceptance, yes, in the matter of having no need to modify one's body, one's mind. So we can add this to the list of jnani. One who has no need to modify their own mind, their own body, nor the world. Why? Because everything is consciousness. Why would I want to improve consciousness if I already am consciousness? Where's the gain? See, if I want to improve myself, who am I improving? The body, mind, intellect, or consciousness? So where does this idea of improving myself come from? Who wants to improve who? Ahamkara wants to improve itself so it can enjoy its own limited existence as something greater. It's got nothing to do with satyam. See, this is a barometer, we're going to close. This is a barometer, by the way. If one still continues wanting to be a better person and wants to improve and have a better sort of, be more compassionate and be more empathetic, then who wants this? Does consciousness want this? Because consciousness is attributeless. It has no capacity to do anything. It just witnesses. So that means there's still an association with what? Ahamkara. Doer, enjoyer. Okay? So how do we now, next week we'll talk about how do we completely disassociate from the body, mind, intellect? Through the process, number 2, I talked about nididhyasanam, dhyanam. Okay? Otherwise, we walk around the world in our job, in our occupation, and we're still associated with the body, mind, intellect. This is a big, you can see this very often. No matter how many years a person has been in Vedanta, they still cater to what? The jiva. There is no partial knowledge. There is only total knowledge. You're either totally identified with consciousness or not at all. Because who are you improving? A person that is not you. Do you want to improve somebody else? Do you usually try and improve somebody else? Then why are you improving yourself? Because we know that's not I, but then why do we say, I want to improve this person? Because the I is linked to this body and not that body. But the I is neither that body, neither this body. So why does a jnani want to improve this person? This person is a different order of reality. And it's going to die anyway. Why am I giving reality to this person? Okay, this will be solved in nididhyasanam dhyanam, in meditation. Sarve bhavantu sukhinaha, sarve santu niramaya, sarve bhadrani pashyantu, ma kaschid dukkha bhag bhavet. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Questions or doubts in relation to what we've spoken about? This is the opportunity to clarify the doubts.
The same desires and passions that the jiva has, will they still be there with moksha? Or will they be thinned out? Or minimized?
To be interested in moksha, can you be interested in freedom if the person has excess desires for limitation? Because the person is either interested in small desires, or they're interested in what? Freedom. And if you're interested in freedom, then you're not interested in small desires, are you? Because every time I go for a small desire, I am denying my own limitlessness. So moksha is a different ballgame.
But you still have a desire and a passion for moksha.
Yeah, you always have desires and passion. You're just not going to have so many desires and passions for worldly entanglements, for samsara. That's why I say simplicity.
Would the base desires still remain, obviously, like desire to eat, desire to sleep?
Yeah, okay, that's a good question.
And desire for sex?
Yeah, that's a good question. Because, have I told you about the 3 realities? Ishvara Srishti and Paramartika, or you could say Vyavaharika and Paramartika. You need to understand these three orders of reality. There is personal, subjective reality called Pratibhasika. Okay, that's my own imaginative reality. That means if I have my own ideas about how you are, that's my stuff, that's not your stuff. Okay, we aware of that? Now there is objective reality called Ishvara Srishti or Vyavaharika. This reality is what you see all around you right now. Sun, cloud, air, right? You can't change it. It is as it is. Body, blood. This reality is called Ishvara Srishti. This reality controls the entire field, including desire to eat, to reproduce, to sleep, and just the basic survival concepts. So that means a jnani who still has a body, and what is the body coming out of? Vyavaharika, or Ishvara Srishti. Thus, a jnani also has desire to eat, desire to sleep, and to reproduce. That is only if it is meant to be so. Okay, because that's also an unnatural desire in the West. We're being over-conditioned to desire to reproduce. You got cultures in the third world countries. They're not exposed to ads and all that, so they have no problem to reproduction. They only reproduce for the sake of a child. So the answer is yes, they still remain because the jnani does not control Ishvara Srishti. Okay? Awareness does not control the entire field. You don't control. See, for example, remember when Ramana got sick? We got cancer. You know what most people said, those who do not understand these three orders of reality? They said because Rama got cancer, Rama is not enlightened. Why? Because they're mixing up what? Pratibhasika, Paramartika, the order of the self, with the objective reality called Ishvara Srishti or Vyavaharika. Thus, they have nothing to do with each other. That means a enlightened person can also get sick, can also have a whole bunch of problems in their own personal health, can also have conditions which are not entirely healthy. Because why? That belongs to Ishvara Srishti. Ishvara Srishti means creation. Okay? So we need to notice, otherwise we'll keep projecting our own ideas how a liberated person is supposed to walk, talk, sound, and so many other things. Once you get these three orders of reality, then there's no problem. Then you can see how there's no contradiction.
So someone who's psychologically, we might say psychologically disturbed, can have achieved moksha.
Well, you have to ask yourself, would that psychological disturbance allow them to cause them to have interest in self-knowledge?
It's a pretty broad category, psychological
Yeah.
disturbance.
Yeah. As long as it's not going to interfere with their study and still allows their intellect to be clear and sharp, no problem. But if you constantly just, like ADD, what is ADD? Attention deficit disorder. Why does it keep happening? Because the person keeps putting focus back onto their own issues, thus giving it fuel. The more you focus, the more energy you give it. Thus, if someone has a psychological problem, what do? We turn our attention away from the problem, because the problem belongs to Vyavaharika.
I think people were questioning Swami Paramahansa. What was the name?
Paramarthananda?
No, the one who has cancer.
Ramananda.
Yeah, that guy. So maybe people were, because even I'm under the idea that the nirvana, once you achieve that state, that is one karma which burns all the previous karma. So the other day you were talking about prarabdha karma.
Yeah,
so when you achieve nirvana, all of your prarabdha karma are burned now.
No,
right?
prarabdha karma stays.
Stays. Okay.
Okay. Why? We'll explain why. Imagine you do a bow and arrow style, and you release. Okay. Now the arrow is going towards what? My target, and then I walk away, and then the person, as in your language, nirvana. What does nirvana even mean?
Enlightenment.
Moksha.
Moksha,
Okay?
yeah, okay, moksha.
Right.
Yeah.
And then a person now knows I am not this body, mind, intellect.
Yeah.
So what? Is the arrow suddenly going to change course?
No.
The arrow is still going to hit its target.
Okay.
And then what's going to happen? The people are going to come over and arrest the liberated person. Because before they gain knowledge, it's their body who shot out of ignorance, and now there's still a body here, so the body gets arrested. So prarabdha karma does not end. It only ends when all of your karma is exhausted. And how do you know that? Because you will die as a person, the body, mind, intellect. That's when the Jeevan Mukta converts into Videha Mukta. Liberated after the physical body of the jnani has died. And then there's no coming back.
So is the purpose of moksha just to break out of that cycle?
Endless cycle of sanchita, always being borrowed in the next birth, and then assigning a prarabdha for this one lifetime. So all our lives right now, your life basically, the way you are, is because if you would imagine, taking a hand in your little lotto box of sanchita for every person, and then dropping it into a baby, boom, and that baby grows up and now has a life that you have.
There's a confusion I have about people who say they are enlightened or experience.
No one's going to ever say they're enlightened. If they say they're enlightened, they don't know.
Or rather, people who believe that they are enlightened, who go and listen to gurus and stuff. So there's this one train of thought where you think that once a person is enlightened, life is bliss, and you said, they enjoy life and they, I guess, are joyful about the small things in life and very simple and that. But then there's also that other aspect where you say with moksha, you sort of move away from feeling happy and sad based on external situations.
Yeah.
So it's like two different perspectives.
Super. Let's get real about this. There is a person. The person undergoes emotions and problems in life. Agree? Who doesn't have problems? Now, why did you say? Okay, so what? Do you have problems?
Everybody does, yes.
But why do you say that? Who has problems? The body has problems. The person has problems. The jiva has problems. So then why do we say I have problems? Because the I is linked to the jiva. So there's always a person and there is I. I is free of the person. So how does this translate into real life? If the person has problems to pay the rent, they're not going to have a bag of money coming down when they disassociate from the body, mind, intellect. The rent problems are going to continue. The relationship problems are going to continue. Life is going to continue. People are not going to be moving away from them on the road. Here you go. You can have special privileges. Everything's the same. Nobody knows. Everybody sees such a person as an ordinary body-mind complex like anyone else. You don't even pay second attention to them. And they're also going through ups and downs. That is, the body's going through ups and downs. But what does a jnani know? I am free of all of this. And where is that knowledge? I am free of all of this? In the intellect. Thus, the jnani can be undergoing turmoil in life, and yet silently within there is what? There is a simple understanding. This is all coming and going. None of this has anything to do with me. But on the outside, the body is going, crying and smiling, just like anyone else.
But that kind of flows back into what he was saying, because once you actually achieve that point in the intellect, that has a direct effect on your decision-making under cause and effects that then proceed on a spontaneous basis.
It also influences, definitely, the more one is firmly established, the more it starts to affect one's decisions, like, should I or shouldn't I? Before, I should go and have fun. Now, what's the point? I'm already happy. This is what a jnani is saying. I'm already happy right here, right now. So why should I participate? So the decisions start changing.
Even to the point where looking after your body, you make a different decision about what you might eat or how you might treat your body or things like that just changes gradually as you become more established.
Exactly. So lifestyle does slowly change. Why? Because to whom do the desires occur? To the person. What are desires? Raga, dvesha, likes and dislikes. And what is tell me this? What does every single person in the world who's identified with the body, tell me how their life is? You can pretty much summarize it like this. You want a summary? Avoid pain, pursue pleasure. That's it. That summarizes every body as body-mind. And what is that? Likes and dislikes. Thus, all actions, all decisions for an ajnani, a non-wise person, are what? Based on avoiding pain and pursuing pleasure. Avoiding dislikes and pursuing likes. So there's a constant drive in life to avoid, to get. And who do these likes and dislikes belong to? To the person. So that means when there's a disassociation, then is there any motivation to avoid pain and pursue pleasure?
But what is wrong with trying to avoid
Correct.
pain?
I agree.
No. Pain is dislike. For example, I dislike reading the scriptures, therefore I choose not to do it.
No, but if I dislike a particular person's behavior, let's say someone's murdered somebody, I don't dislike internally, but I'm not going to have a relationship or build a friendship with that person. So I'll still behave that way.
That's not what I meant. That's an opinion. I talked about actions being motivated by my own likes and dislikes. If I have a like for cake, I go and eat cake all day. If I have a dislike for partying, I go and party and avoid partying all the time.
Well, couldn't you say once you're fully identifying with awareness and consciousness, you're still going to be expressing this manifestation to avoid pain and pursue pleasure?
Yeah.
But the objects of those pleasure and pain are going to subtly change. Is that how you see it? In other words, instead of pursuing pleasure, going to an all-night rave party, the pursuit of the pleasure might be to eat some beautiful food or to read a scripture. You know what I mean?
Yeah, okay. There are pleasures, there are avoidance of pleasure and pain, but only in the aspect of what? Surviving.
Yeah. It becomes part of the Dharma.
Yeah, it's part of Dharma, but it's not my stuff. There's no person who's trying to get stuff. That's the difference. Because that person is what? Not I.
But then doesn't that take the meaning of life? Then it's like what happens to I doesn't matter. You won't be so, you won't consider your life to be precious.
Well, no, because then you're being careless. And that would be...
Because, you know that if it ends, you're not ending. You don't associate with that I anymore. So then what's the point of it all?
Because your swadharma is still running, and you
You're
still
hurting-
have
you're hurting
duties
other
to
people.
fulfill to the world,
You'll be hurting
and for
other
that
people
reason
in a
you're
sense.
still kept going.
Yeah.
Because you don't control Vyavaharika, the reality of Ishvara Srishti. The field controls your body.
So then there is no action arising from within.
For personal
you just
selfish
go with
ones.
the flow.
Yeah.
Just
From personal selfish ones, that goes away.
Because if you develop a couldn't care less attitude, that's going to be different.
Yeah, we're not talking about couldn't care less.
Yeah, yeah.
We're talking about there's nobody left to want to profit or to have or to avoid loss. That person is gone. Because why? That belongs to whom? The body, mind, intellect. And what does the body, mind, intellect want? Avoid pain, pursue pleasure. So all of my I actions are linked with the motivation of these two sides. So what happens when it is disassociation? Then I still avoid pain, I still pursue pleasure, but it's no longer motivated by my needs, it's motivated by whose needs? The needs of the total.
Yeah.
So that's the difference.
Yeah.
So this is what we call, you call this surrendering to the will of Ishvara. Okay?
I think that's when you get the realization that the organism isn't the boundaries of the
Yes.
skin. The organism is the whole of life.
Yeah.
You still have to fulfill your
Exactly.
duties
Very good.
and your swadharma in this world.
You see
So
the difference?
in that in that aspect you have to
Absolutely.
pursue and take care of
Yeah.
your family, yourself.
And the reason I really sometimes bring that up, because that is obvious. Like, taking care of family is obvious, but sometimes I guess we need to bring it up because we get a wrong impression, like, oh, well, you're not going to care. Taking care of one's dharma, pursuing one's duties, still doing what one needs to do, taking care of their kids, their family, working, that is going to go without a question. That doesn't even come up because that's obvious. But in between those actions, there is no personal agenda to gain or to lose. Let it be, because I don't control the field. So in other words, what happens to a wise person's actions? They gain wisdom. Their nature changes from impure to pure. Before, they were about my needs, and now they're about the needs of the environment. That's the only difference. Is that clear?
Yep.
100%? I want to make sure that we actually know what a wise person is. Otherwise, these ideas will hinder our own journey. 100% clear? What a wise person is? How they operate? Why they operate? Okay, question. Why does a wise person do what a wise person does? Answer.
To help others?
Because they're wise.
To bring the joy of the whole.
Yep, all answers are like very good. Why else?
To fulfill the Swadharma.
Yeah, much even better, yeah. I mean, there's not many options, just fulfill the needs of...
It's a karma today.
Excellent, also. And why does the unwise person do what they do?
To help themselves.
Yep.
They're motivated by their own ego.
Likes and
When they're
dislikes.
connected with their own mind.
Good, good.
Forcing pleasure.
Yeah.
Vedanta.
You see the difference?
Yeah.
Still the same person, but the motivation is different. That's it.